So, just to get started, quick disclaimer, this is an audio-only video, so it's not going to be the usual format where I sit on a chair and talk to you. Instead, I'm standing up, speaking into my microphone in its proper setup, and it's going to be a bit of a different video, as I will explain shortly. So, about a week ago now, I put out a poll on my Instagram, which I mentioned at the end of last video, asking if people would like to see different content to just the Writer's Raine podcast on the Writer's Raine channel. And you guys came back and answered, and it was a resounding yes. Now I started to ask what kind of things you like to see in addition to the podcast, which will be continuing. It's just this week I thought I'd try something new in the regular slot. So, yeah, this is the new kind of section that I'm going to try to bring to you guys, and the idea of this bit is I'm looking to just do readings of pieces of creative writing done sometimes by me, today's is, but if any of you writers out there, which I hope is a lot of you, given the kind of content I'm creating, if you want to send anything in, I would gladly give it a read, and possibly even some feedback maybe, though, you might be more qualified than I am, so my feedback might not be relevant. So, on to what we're reading this week. So, if you remember all the way back to last episode of the Writer's Raine podcast, episode 5, about titles, I brought up a series that I was writing, a series of short stories called A Tale Best Not Told. And in that video, I express how I'm not sure how or if I will ever get that series out to you guys if you did want to read it. And I thought this would be the perfect kind of series to start releasing it, essentially. So it'll be in an audiobook format rather than a published format on Wattpad like Amber and Steel is. So without further ado, I'll be reading part 1 of 6 today, and that is part 1, Wynter's Vigil. So let's get into it. What has my brother dragged me into this time? I sit silently in the corner stool of a rundown tavern, eyes trained on the entrance. However, not even the 4 winds had stirred the double oak doors since my coming. I'm beginning to believe he intends to leave me disappointed, as he often has before. I warily pull the parchment from my pocket, unrolling it to check it over once more. This was certainly the place, I'm sure of that much, but given what it says on my pocket watch, he should have arrived by now. That is all that's written on the torn parchment, which had been delivered to me a week prior by Raven. A location, a time, and his signature. The wretched signature that was scrawled at the bottom of our father's death warrant. Something stirs me from my spiteful reminiscence of my dear brother. A creak of rusted hinges. A brief glimpse of the bustle of the city beyond, a second creak, and silence again. I look to see someone has arrived. Not my brother, but a young man, seemingly a human also, but by no means similar to Ace, at least on the surface. He stands around the 6-foot mark, just taller than myself. His hair on his head fair, and his eyes a shifting amalgam of green and blue. He seems to wear combat robes, but bears no weapon. I'm the only patron of this hole in the wall, and the proprietor had got outside to smoke his pipe. That leaves only him and I. He seems the type to drop by a tavern of an evening, so I think little of his presence, assuming he will wait for the bartender. He seats himself on one of the stools lining the bar and patiently awaits the owner's return. I return to my thoughts, but I am put at unease by his presence. Something feels off. His eyes occasionally pass over me and linger a little too long. Perhaps he knows me, but that is no feat for a renowned cryomancer like myself to be recognized. To scorn to his prying eyes, I lock my own with his next time he passes, and he promptly returns his gaze to the dusty bottles lining the shelves behind the bar. I observe him for a few more minutes, before all is revealed. From his own belt he pulls a roll of stained parchment near identical to my own. That's when my suspicions were confirmed. Though not Ace, nor a magician like myself. This man before me was a controller of shadows, just as my accursed brother. Does Ace intend to assemble his cohort against me? Given all that's occurred, I cannot put it past him to do so, nor can I blame him. Well, for now, I suppose I'll wait it out. I have no need to talk to him. If he is here to help my brother to kill me, he'll simply be another small obstacle to overcome. The bartender returns, offering a half-sincere apology, before pouring out a tankard of long-expired mead for him. The cycle of the door opening and closing begins once again, and a new set of footsteps begin to make their way across the creaky floorboards. I look up from my pocket watch and parchment to see a shorter elven woman having entered. Her hair color suggests she may be a wood elf, her blonde and brown blend tied together behind her head, and her height considerably shorter than that of her high elf counterparts. She clutches at a staff, a blue crystal embedded at the top. This woman had not the energy of shadow magic I sensed in both my brother and the man at the bar, but rather that of life. Without a doubt, I was looking at a floromancer. They were a legendary order of elven druids, though somewhat out of their element in an urbanized area like this. She seemed innocent enough, absent-mindedly strolling towards an empty table, which was admittedly all of them, but a second thought crosses my mind. A female elven floromancer was said to have interrupted the construction of a business investment of mine, one who fit her description perfectly. I shake my head, and allow a slight smile. Of course not. There's no way it could be her. After all, I encased her entire village in an unmelting glacier not long after I'd received news of her interruption. She pulls out a rickety chair and sits, perching at the edge of her seat as if she was ready to leave at any second. She leans her staff against the bolted-down table while her eyes look around the room, seemingly searching for something. Eventually they settle on the door. Is she here to meet someone? My brother, perhaps? She hasn't interacted with the humans, so they must not know one another. Nor to the barkeep, though he seems happy enough to have her present. Filling out the seats was good publicity for his undeniably low-standard establishment. All of this continues to grow ever more peculiar, and my brother's intentions are once again shrouded in black. Again the door goes, this time ringing the makeshift bell that had failed to toll the 2 times previous. The person who enters has the complexion of an elf, but a pair of wings sprout from his back. A fey spirit, perhaps. It's hard to tell, but I estimate him to be a few inches taller than the man at the bar, a little more slender and his hair far darker ochre. He, like the first, carried no weapon, but his clothes suitable for battle. He closes the door gently behind him before striding across to the bar. His gait like dance as his wings allow him to glide across the floor where he takes his own stool 3 down from the human. I am sure now it is no coincidence that these 3 gather here at the same time as I. How many more will come? I do hope Ace doesn't intend for me to work with them. A 4th arrival. I wait for them to come fully into view. As the noise of the outside world ceases, I see a woman, this one seemingly human, save for the wings on her back. They weren't avian like the elf who just entered, in fact, they seem almost demonic in nature. She seems a tad shorter than I, though I cannot quite be sure. Her hair is cut short and holds a similar fair colour to the first human. At her hip, a rapier with an intricate hilt, without a doubt of fine smith's work. The moment the door closes, her wings shimmer and disappear. An illusionist, perhaps, or perhaps she is, as I suspected, a demon, accustomed to mingling on our plane. She does not move from the entrance. I suppose she, too, is here to meet Ace. Yes, there it is. She takes out her own parchment. After studying it for a few minutes, she rolls it back up and finds an empty table of her own. I sit for a while longer. No sign of my brother. If my watch is correct, he is around half an hour late, had even arrived early. I suppose I have no choice but to break the ice. The irony of doing so is not lost on a cryomancer like me. I clasp my hand around my glass of whiskey, the ice cubes I created unmelted, despite having sat and drink for over 45 minutes now. I raise it to my lips and take in the last of the smooth single malt, chilled to perfection. If this place had one thing going for us, it was its stock of fine drinks. And, unlike the mead, the whiskey had only grown better with age. Once empty, I place the glass back down, and slide out of my seat, standing before these strangers. They turn to look. For lack of other action, the human take a little longer than the others. One pair of eyes in particular feels to be burning deeper into me than any other, but I can't immediately tell whose. I suppose each of you are here to see my brother Ace? I asked, already knowing the answer, but it felt customary to check. The reactions are mixed. The one who emits the power of shadows smiles wryly, while the woman I take to be a demon looks somewhat confused. The winged elf raised a surprised eyebrow, but it is the female elf with the staff that produces the most interesting reaction of all. Her eyes narrow the moment she sees my face, and her hands go for her staff. Instinctively I raise my own hands, and the air grows cold around them. This aura slowly spreading over my whole body and the area around, but I'm used to it. Wynter, brother, please do not kill my friend. The bastard I tolerate as her brother emerges from the shadow in the corner of the room. Has he been there the whole time? It doesn't matter, he's shown his face now. I hope this isn't another waste of my time, Ace. I snarl. I have a nagging suspicion it may be, but it could be worth my while to wait around a little. No, not at all, he smirks, the shit-eating smile I once made the mistake of trusting. This will certainly be worthwhile. And who are all these imbeciles you've roped in, I sigh as I gesture to those around the bar. Why, brother, his smile grows a little and tilts his head, they'll be helping us on this quest. I let out a longer sigh, or perhaps this time it might have been a groan. Either would have been suffice to express my discontent. I'm still none the wiser to the question I had asked myself when I arrived. Just exactly what has my brother dragged me into this time? Ace unceremoniously moves around me, though I made sure that our shoulders brush, to remind him who is stronger. He hops onto a chair before stepping up onto the table, addressing the room. Thank you everyone for gathering here, and I apologize on my brother's behalf for how things have begun. But I'm now ready to disclose the reason I have asked you all here today, he announces grandly, looking to each of us in turn. Just 2 weeks ago I received word down the grapevine about a trove of gold not far from here in a deep dark cave. I was also told that there may be something or someone protecting it. I would have written all this on a message I sent each of you, but I could not risk it being intercepted. The people in this room are those I deem most capable of defeating whatever protects this horde, and as such, most deserving of what lies within. I looked across to the elven woman, who seemed to have relaxed, though her eyes would momentarily lock into mine. Not many can sustain my glare, but this woman seems to match it. But if an angry stare and some nature magic is all she has going for her, I felt I had to ask myself. Capable of defeating anything? Her, or anyone here for that matter. Ace continues. Of course I understand if this venture would simply be impossible for you to join at this time, and if that is the case, feel free to leave at any time. I will pay for your travel. As sly with his words as I remember. Ace was subtly trying to make anyone who may want to leave feel bad for doing so, a truth that even with our differences, I had to admire my brother for using. Nobody stirred straight away, though some looked between myself and the others, as if waiting for another to move first. Ace, you know I'd follow you into the pits of Sinhead and back. The other human smiles. Of course, Wolfhard, and thank you for joining me. I'll join up, the demon woman adds. If I can bring something back for Ira and the Order, she'll be most pleased. Thank you, Sheeran. Welcome aboard. I apologize again for tearing you away from your duties at the guild. This woman, presumably Sheeran, nods in response. I had no idea who this Ira or this Order or guild were, but I can tell they meant a lot to her. Something to exploit, perhaps. The elven woman opens her mouth to speak, but I've made up my mind about all this, and I interrupt her. What cut of the treasure are you proposing will go to each member of the group? I ask. While I speak, I channel my magic into the ice cubes in my empty glass, a habit of mine to relieve any anger I would otherwise put in my voice. Equally, of course, should it be any other way, Ace replies without missing a beat. I'm in, but I want your cut as insurance. He may have my attention, but I'll have his acceptance of my terms. What? Ace asks, an eyebrow raised inquisitively. If this trove of yours isn't a worthwhile use of my time, I'll take your cut of the money. The surface of the glass begins to crack as more pent-up anger begins to surge into the ice cubes. Even have to beat you into the ground and pick it off your body. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Wynter. Ace's response was calm, even in the face of my threats. Besides, should it come to that, it won't end like last time. You're exactly right, Ace. I overdo it and the glass shatters, the now considerably large ice cubes dropping onto the table. You can't kill our father twice. So this has been the start of the new series on the channel. We'll look at how we want to kind of balance this out in terms of content, whether we do alternating weeks between this and the podcast, or I did even try and tackle both at the same time. Just a heads up, next week I'll be out in France, so I won't be able to record for you guys. I might try and make some pre-recordings of me reading this that I can upload as and when while I'm away. But in the meantime, I may not see you for 3 weeks, unfortunately. So I'll see you guys around. And thank you for tuning in. Please drop a comment, tell me what you thought about this kind of content that you want, whether you want different content, what kind of content you want, and what you thought of this stuff. But yeah, without further ado, it's been, I enjoy doing these readings. It's been kind of stretch my voice out a bit more than the podcast, so it's been a pleasure. And I'll see you all next week, or 3 weeks.